Hello, noble ones. Welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. Today we're going to talk about Mongolian armies and battle strategy. The Mongols. Well, there are a lot of things that make the Mongols famous, and there are a lot of things to say when we decide to study and examine the Mongolians. However, there are a few things that I've decided to choose for this video in order for it not to be too long, because again, as I said, there are a lot of things to say. I've decided to talk about what made the Mongols famous, meaning their battle strategies. Now, when we talk about Mongolian warfare, of course the first thing that comes to mind is the mounted archers. I noticed, on the internet as I was talking to various people, I noticed that a lot of people focus on the mounted archers. But I think there is also another key factor that played a pivotal role in Mongolian superiority on the battlefield. You see, if we wish to understand thoroughly why the Mongols were so effective on the battlefield, particularly if compared to Europeans, then we need to consider certain factors that might not appear to have much to do with warfare and battle strategies at first glance, but that ultimately they do, and I will back up this statement shortly. Now, Western civilizations such as Greece, Rome, Babylon, Carthage, Assyria shared something in common. They were all based on permanent settlement. Year after year, these populations cultivated the same ground. This was an essential characteristic of the literal empires. However, in the heartland of Eurasia, the situation was polar opposite. We have seasonal movements of entire peoples with their flocks and herds, who were living in feltyards, which would basically be temporary structures. The conditions of life in the Eurasian interior were not easy. Also, many grazing grounds were less productive than others, so the situation was not even, due to droughts, for example. And this led these nomad people to fight against each other constantly, as victory over your opposing tribes could have meant the difference between life and death. But perhaps the subjugation of the horse was the definitive achievement, if you will, of the steppe people, which gave them increased mobility. They spent most of their time on horseback, which made horses a virtual extensions of their bodies. They became what I would call natural cavalry. Moreover, 10 centuries previously, they had developed an incredible weapon, the compound bow, which in conjunction with a horse would create the famous Mongolian mounted archers. Compared to a longbow, clearly the compound bow was shorter, but it still had enough strength to penetrate mail armor and easy to kill. They used bodkin points, which could kill at 300 yards. Their secret? Speed and surprise. Now, as we know, often when we compare the Mongolian mounted archers, we wish to compare them with the medieval knight. And because, of course, they have met, particularly in Eastern Europe, as the Mongols did manage to conquer, partially, East Europe. We do need to realize, though, that I will make a specific video where I will compare, we'll talk about a specific battle, and the one of the battles where the Europeans were beaten. And I will also talk about battles where the Mongols were beaten by the European, which didn't happen very often, but it did happen a couple of times. So we will see why. But often when we wish to compare these two kind of mounted forces, we imagine the European knight, so mail armor, great helmet, and spears or lances. Now, one of the advantages of the mounted archers, as you compare them with mounted knights with lances and spears, is the fact that mounted archers can deal an incredible amount of damage to infantry and, for example, other cavalry and even phalanx without having to impact the enemy forces. So this is really what makes the difference here. We need to consider that the kind of stallions and horses that the Mongols were riding were still smaller than European warhorse. However, they were also very quick, also because you need to consider the mounted archers weren't wearing that much armor either. So we're talking about a kind of unit that can reach the enemy, deal an incredible amount of damage and retreat without having to impact enemy spears, enemy swords and so forth. So this is one of the reasons why they were very effective. Still though, if the European knights could have managed to charge and actually impact a full unit of Mongolian mounted archers, it would have been a disaster for the Mongols, as Europeans were better equipped as far as armors were concerned. Now, the fact that it didn't happen is the key to understand why the Mongols won. The generals, their commanders, their strategies. This is what made the difference, not the equipment. What really made the difference on the battlefield in favor of the Mongols was combining the speed of the horse with a refined system of control and timing. What would normally happen is that horsemen rushed forward in a furious charge, pretended they had failed. They withdrew, so they were retreating in panic, waiting for the enemy to rush after them. As the enemy would do just that, they would go beyond their supports, losing their tight defensive order, having individuals become separated. As this occurred, the horse archers would regroup abruptly, turning on the advancing enemy, destroying them one soldier at a time. Alright then, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching as always, noble ones. And remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.